So currently I live in a small town, and sometimes it can feel as though you can't really get good photos unless you go out of your way to go on some big adventure to a national park or a big city. But the fact is that is not true. You can get some decent photos in a small town. You just have to get a little more creative with it and kind of explore your city in a way that you never have before. And that's what I did for this video. And here are some tips for getting decent landscapes in a small town. My first tip is to find a standalone building. So the thing about small towns is usually there's a lot of space between structures, and it doesn't really take much to find a building that is standing all alone by itself, whether it is just a random building or an abandoned building. That could provide a very simplistic subject for your landscape photo. For me personally, I kind of live in a country area, so it didn't take much driving around to find an old abandoned barn, or I wouldn't say abandoned because it seems like the cows were liking it and the cows are around it. So I don't think it's an abandoned barn, but it's definitely kind of seen better days. But regardless of that, it still made an excellent subject for my photos, and the fact that it didn't have any other buildings around it made it more beautiful. And sometimes you have to look for random things that you wouldn't really consider to be beautiful just by looking at them, and then get creative with your photography and present them in a way that does make them beautiful. And in this case, standalone buildings make excellent, beautiful subjects. My second tip for you is to look for large man-made structures. For me, that means telephone towers. There are a crap ton of telephone wires and towers going through these big fields, and they make for really good subjects, especially because of all the lines that the wires form. So I got this picture right here of just the telephone towers, and I threw my car in, or actually it's my mom's car. I'm using it right now. That's a story for another day. But I put the car in the photo, and I think the lines of the wires combined with the line of the street really made for a good shot. So just looking for big random structures like telephone towers or water towers, bridges, stuff like that can really add a little bit of flair to your photo, and small towns tend to have things like that. My third tip for you is to check out your town's parks. If your town doesn't have a park, maybe this tip isn't for you, but most towns at least have one neighborhood park, and don't knock it until you try it. Just walk through your park, take some photos of whatever cool things you see, and you might be surprised. Personally, my town has a few little parks. This one right here is my favorite because it has a little creek going through it and a lot of eucalyptus trees that make for good photos. The fourth tip that I have for you is to explore the outskirts of your town. Since my town is kind of more in the country, it doesn't take much driving to find a rural area. And what I did for these photos was drive out probably 15-20 minutes to some random spot that I've never been to before, and I found some very picturesque landscapes, and here they are. So yeah, don't be afraid to kind of push your boundaries as to what your town can provide and drive 10-15 minutes in a direction that you've never gone before. You might be surprised, like I was, at what you find. The fifth tip that I have for you is to take macro landscapes. And in case you don't know, a macro landscape is pretty much a photo of something that is tiny but zoomed close up onto it so that it takes up the entire photo. So I got some photos of flowers on an almond tree when I was out and about and driving around some almond orchards. And although the big picture might not be extremely picturesque, zooming in on a tiny part and focusing on something that is beautiful in it could make for a really good photo. So keep that in mind. You don't need some grand, picturesque, beautiful scene. You can just zoom in and focus on what matters. My last tip for you guys today is to always be on the lookout for a good shot. There has been so many times where I am driving home from work and I see something that looks photo-esque, and then I come back later to take photos of it. And just keeping photography in mind as you're driving around, you'd be surprised at what things you notice as you're making your way to and from the grocery store or something. And you can do this just when you're driving around doing other stuff, or you can do this with the intention of getting photos like I did for this video. For this video, I just drove around my town and looked for cool things. And when I saw something, I wasn't afraid to pull over and take photos of it. One example of this happening was this photo right here. I was on my way to the park thinking, oh, I'm gonna get some photos at the park. And then on the way there, I saw this cool looking camper van that was orange, and between me and the van was this little field of flowers, and it just seemed like a perfect shot. So I pulled over, was kind of a creeper, and took photos from a distance, but I got this shot, which I really like, and I think it's totally worth the creepy vibes. But with that being said, that's the last tip that I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And until next time, bye.